8 years after they buried his daughter, Ethan Carter stopped believing in miracles. He believed in routines. Wake up. Count the bars. Eat without tasting. Sleep without dreaming. Miracles belonged to people who still had something left to lose. Ethan had lost everything on a cold October afternoon in the Rocky Mountains. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, disappeared during what was supposed to be a weekend camping trip. 48 hours later, search teams found a small body buried beneath loose soil nearly half a mile from the campsite. The child's face had been too badly damaged for visual identification. DNA testing confirmed it was Lily. Or so everyone believed. The newspapers called Ethan Carter a monster. Prosecutors claimed he had snapped after years of financial problems and a collapsing marriage. His fingerprints were on the shovel. Lily's blood was inside his truck. After 36 hours of non-stop interrogation, he signed a confession. He tried to take it back the next morning. No one cared. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Life without parole. Case closed. For 8 years, Ethan replayed every minute of that camping trip. He remembered Lily chasing butterflies near the trees. He remembered her laughing because she insisted the mountains echoed her name louder than his. He remembered turning away for less than a minute to gather firewood. When he looked back, she was gone. The prison siren pulled him back to the present. Morning count. Another ordinary day inside Red Creek State Penitentiary. Cell doors rolled open with their usual metallic groan. Inmates shuffled toward breakfast without speaking. Ethan carried his tray to the same empty table he had used for nearly 3 years. Most prisoners left him alone. Even murderers had rules. Men accused of killing children rarely survived long. Ethan survived only because everyone believed he had nothing left worth taking. Across the cafeteria, Officer Miguel Ramirez watched him quietly. Ramirez had worked the prison for almost 15 years. Unlike most guards, he never mocked Ethan. He never offered sympathy either. He simply watched. After breakfast, Ethan reported to the prison library. It was the only place where the noise disappeared. Rows of worn paperbacks lined cracked wooden shelves. The room smelled of old paper and disinfectant. For 4 hours each day, Ethan repaired damaged books with glue and clear tape. It gave his hands something to do while his mind wandered somewhere else. Just before noon, a group of volunteers entered carrying several boxes. Most were college students donating books collected during a community fundraiser. One woman carried a cardboard box filled with framed photographs from the event. She smiled politely as she walked past Ethan. Then someone bumped into her. The box slipped from her hands. Photographs scattered across the library floor. Ethan instinctively bent to help. He picked up one frame. Then another. His hand froze on the third. It showed dozens of families gathered at a charity fund run in Denver. Children stood near the finish line holding balloons. Parents smiled for the camera. Nothing unusual. Until Ethan looked toward the far left corner. A teenage girl stood partially hidden behind a woman wearing a red jacket. Most people would never have noticed her. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was turning her head toward someone outside the frame. Ethan's breathing slowed. His fingers tightened around the photograph. Just below the girl's left ear was a small crescent-shaped birthmark. Ethan knew that birthmark. He had kissed it every night before Lily went to bed. His wife used to joke that it looked like a tiny moon. Doctors had called it unique enough to identify her without fingerprints. His chair scraped loudly across the floor. The volunteer looked startled. "Sir, are you okay?" Ethan couldn't answer. His eyes never left the photograph. The girl looked older, taller. Her hair was darker. But the birthmark hadn't changed. Officer Ramirez noticed Ethan standing motionless. He crossed the room. "Carter?" Ethan slowly handed him the frame. "Where was this taken?" he whispered. The volunteer glanced at the back of the photograph. "Last weekend. Denver Children's Hope Run." Ethan felt the room begin to spin. His daughter had been buried 8 years ago. He had watched the casket disappear into the ground. He had listened as strangers offered condolences. He had spent nearly a decade convincing himself there was nothing left to fight for. Now a single photograph had destroyed every certainty he had left. Officer Ramirez looked from the picture to Ethan. "You know her?" Ethan's voice barely rose above a whisper. "That's my daughter." Officer Ramirez studied the photograph for several long seconds. Then he looked back at Ethan. "Your daughter died 8 years ago." Ethan never took his eyes off the picture. "That's what everyone keeps telling me." The volunteer shifted uncomfortably. I don't know the girl. Our organization just hired a photographer for the event. The pictures arrived yesterday." Ramirez carefully turned the frame over. A small sticker on the back listed the photographer's name and the event coordinator's contact information. Nothing else. "Can I keep this?" Ethan asked. Before the volunteer could answer, Ramirez spoke. "No. But I'll make sure it's preserved." Ethan's shoulders slumped. He had expected that answer. That evening, after the prison settled into its usual silence, Ramirez stopped outside Ethan's cell. He looked both directions down the corridor before speaking. "Tell me about the birthmark." Ethan sat on the edge of his bunk. "Lily was born with it. Behind her left ear. Doctors said it was rare. My wife used to call it her little crescent moon." "Could another child have the same mark?" "Maybe. But not in the exact same place." Ramirez remained quiet. Over the years, he'd seen inmates convince themselves of impossible things. Some insisted they were framed. Others claimed witnesses had lied. Most were simply refusing to accept reality. But Ethan Carter had never been like that. He rarely talked about his case. He never blamed the jury. He never demanded a new trial. He had accepted prison with the hopelessness of a man who believed nothing could change. Until today. "I'll make a phone call," Ramirez said. "No promises. Just don't build your life around one photograph." Ethan nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. 3 days passed. No one mentioned the picture again. Ethan began to wonder if Ramirez had forgotten. Or worse, if someone had decided the photograph should disappear. On the 4th afternoon, Ramirez returned. He carried a plain manila folder. "I wasn't supposed to get this." He slid a single sheet of paper through the food slot. It was a copy of the original high-resolution photograph. Unlike the framed version, this image showed much more of the background. Ethan's eyes immediately found the girl. Then he noticed something else. She wasn't alone. A man stood beside her. Only part of his face was visible. He wore sunglasses and a baseball cap. One hand rested protectively on the girl's shoulder. "Can you enlarge it?" Ethan asked. "Already did." Ramirez removed another page from the folder. The enlarged image was grainy. But one detail remained perfectly clear. The man wore a silver signet ring. Engraved into its surface was the outline of a raven with its wings spread wide. Ethan's face went pale. "You've seen it before," Ramirez said. "Yes. The lead detective wore that ring." Ramirez frowned. "The detective who arrested you?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Detective Samuel Briggs. He never took it off." Ramirez opened the folder again. Briggs retired 5 years ago. No public address. No consulting business. He practically disappeared. Ethan stared at the photograph. If the man beside the girl really was Briggs, then the detective who had built the case against him might have known all along that Lily was alive. Before either man could say another word, alarms suddenly echoed through the prison. Metal doors slammed shut. Officers shouted from the lower cell block. "Lockdown," Ramirez muttered. "Stay inside." He started to walk away, then stopped. He turned back toward Ethan. "There's one more thing." "What?" "The photographer who took that picture was found dead yesterday morning." The prison remained under lockdown for nearly 6 hours. From inside his cell, Ethan could hear officers running through the corridors. Doors slammed. Radios crackled. But none of it mattered. His mind was still fixed on the photograph. The photographer was dead. The detective who had arrested him might have been standing beside Lily only days earlier. Either the coincidence was impossible, or someone was cleaning up loose ends. Just after midnight, Officer Ramirez returned. He looked exhausted. "The lockdown wasn't about the inmates," he said quietly. "Then what was it?" "State investigators came looking for someone. You." Ethan stood. "Why?" "Nobody would tell me. But your prison file was removed from records for almost an hour. When it came back, 3 pages were missing." "Which pages?" "The original interrogation transcript, the evidence inventory, and the DNA identification report." Ethan felt a chill. Those were the 3 documents that had convicted him. "Someone's rewriting the case," he whispered. Ramirez looked down the hallway before speaking again. "I made another phone call. The photographer's name was Kevin Doyle. 42 years old. Official cause of death: a gas leak." Ethan frowned. "Official?" "Unofficially, the detective handling the scene believes someone staged it." "Why?" "Because Kevin's cameras were gone. Every memory card. Every hard drive. Everything except the photographs already delivered to the charity." Ethan closed his eyes. Someone hadn't wanted the pictures. They wanted one specific picture. The next morning, Ethan received an unexpected visitor. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a reporter. It wasn't family. It was Detective Rachel Monroe. She entered the interview room carrying a thick case file. Late 30s. Calm. Observant. The kind of detective who listened longer than she spoke. She sat across from Ethan without opening the file. "Mr. Carter. I reopened Kevin Doyle's death investigation yesterday." "Why?" "Because before he died, he called my office." Ethan leaned forward. "He said he had accidentally photographed something important. He sounded frightened. We scheduled a meeting for the following morning. He never arrived." "Did he say what was in the picture?" "No. He only repeated one sentence." Rachel opened a small notebook. She read directly from her notes. "Someone who was supposed to stay dead is still alive." The room fell silent. Rachel studied Ethan carefully. "Then yesterday morning, Officer Ramirez contacted me. He told me about the girl in the photograph." "Do you believe me?" Ethan asked. Rachel didn't answer immediately. "I believe in evidence. And right now, the evidence from your case is starting to disappear." She finally opened the case file. Inside were crime scene photographs Ethan had never seen before. One image showed the shallow grave where Lily's body had supposedly been found. Rachel slid it across the table. "Look closely." Ethan stared at the picture. At first, he noticed nothing unusual. Then his eyes widened. The small pink backpack Lily had been carrying on the camping trip was sitting beside the grave, completely clean. Not a speck of dirt. If search teams had dug up the body first, the backpack should have been covered in mud. Instead, someone had placed it there afterward. Rachel slowly closed the file. "Mr. Carter. I think someone staged your daughter's death. And I think they're willing to kill anyone who discovers the truth." Rachel Monroe waited until the prison interview room was empty before speaking again. "If I'm right," she said, "then your conviction wasn't built on one mistake. It was built on dozens." Ethan stared at the crime scene photographs spread across the table. For 8 years, he had memorized every newspaper article, every courtroom transcript, every accusation. Yet no one had ever shown him these original photographs. "Why are you looking at my case now?" he asked. Rachel didn't hesitate. "Because Kevin Doyle died trying to tell me something. People don't usually murder photographers over ordinary pictures." She slid another photograph across the table. It showed the campsite exactly as investigators had found it. The tent. The fire pit. Ethan's pickup truck. Yellow evidence markers scattered across the clearing. "Do you remember this cooler?" Rachel asked. Ethan looked toward a blue camping cooler sitting beside the truck. "Of course. Lily kept asking if the marshmallows were inside." According to the evidence log, investigators never opened it. Ethan frowned. "What?" "No fingerprints. No inventory. Nothing. It's listed in the photographs. But disappears from the report." Ethan leaned closer. "You're saying evidence vanished before the trial?" "I'm saying someone decided what evidence mattered." Rachel gathered the photographs. "I've requested access to the physical evidence. If the cooler still exists, I want it tested." "Will they let you?" Rachel gave a tired smile. "Not willingly." Later that afternoon, she drove to the county evidence warehouse. The building stored decades of criminal evidence. Everything from narcotics to murder weapons. An elderly property clerk led her through endless rows of metal shelving. Every aisle smelled of dust and cardboard. "Case number?" the clerk asked. Rachel handed him the file. The clerk typed for nearly a minute. Then his expression changed. "That's strange." "What is?" "According to the computer, this evidence was destroyed 4 years ago." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Destroyed under whose authorization?" The clerk frowned at the screen. "Detective Samuel Briggs." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. Briggs had retired 5 years ago. Yet the authorization had been signed a full year after his retirement. "Can I see the paperwork?" The clerk printed the digital record. Rachel studied the signature. It looked genuine. Almost too genuine. Then she noticed the date. The authorization had been approved at exactly 2:14 a.m. Evidence warehouses didn't process destruction requests in the middle of the night. Someone had accessed the system remotely. Rachel immediately requested the server logs. The IT technician returned 20 minutes later. His face was pale. "The request didn't come from this building." "Where did it come from?" He pointed to a single line on the report. "The Denver Police Department." Rachel's stomach tightened. Samuel Briggs had spent his final years in Denver after retiring. The same city where Kevin Doyle photographed the mysterious teenage girl. Back at Red Creek Prison, Officer Ramirez arrived at Ethan's cell carrying evening mail. Among the envelopes was one with no return address. "You weren't supposed to receive this," Ramirez said quietly. "It wasn't processed through the normal mailroom." Ethan carefully opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No signature. No fingerprints. Only one sentence typed across the center. "Stop looking for Lily. The next funeral will have your name on it." Officer Ramirez read the anonymous letter twice before placing it into an evidence bag. "Who else has seen this?" Ethan asked. "Just you and me. I'm filing it as a death threat. Whether anyone takes it seriously is another question." Ethan leaned against the concrete wall. "They wouldn't threaten me unless they were scared. Or unless they wanted you to stop asking questions." Ramirez looked directly at him. "Either way, someone knows you're getting close." 200 miles away, Rachel Monroe parked outside a quiet neighborhood in suburban Denver. The address belonged to Samuel Briggs, the detective who had built the case against Ethan Carter. The house appeared abandoned. Newspapers covered the front porch. The lawn had grown knee-high. No lights. No cars. A neighbor watched Rachel from across the street. After showing her badge, Rachel walked over. "When was the last time you saw Mr. Briggs?" The elderly woman thought for a moment. "About 2 weeks ago. He packed a black SUV and drove away before sunrise. Said he was finally taking a vacation. Did he mention where? No. But someone visited him the night before. Rachel's attention sharpened. Can you describe the visitor? Tall man. Gray suit. Very expensive watch. They argued in the driveway for nearly 20 minutes. Did you hear what they were saying? The woman shook her head. Only one sentence. The tall man kept saying, "It should have stayed buried." Rachel searched Briggs's property that afternoon. Most of the house had been cleaned out. Drawers were empty. Closets were bare. Someone had removed almost every trace of the former detective's life. Almost. Hidden beneath the loose floorboard in the garage was a small metal lockbox. It wasn't locked. Inside were 3 items: an old police badge, a flash drive, and a handwritten notebook. Rachel opened the notebook first. The handwriting belonged to Samuel Briggs. The first several pages contained ordinary investigative notes. Then the entries changed. Shorter. More nervous. One sentence had been underlined 3 times. "I arrested the wrong man." Rachel stopped breathing for a moment. She turned the page. The DNA results didn't make sense. I questioned the lab. 2 days later, I was ordered to stop asking questions. Another page. Someone replaced the original evidence before trial. I know it happened. I just can't prove who did it. Rachel reached the final entry. It had been written only 9 days earlier. "If anything happens to me, the answers are on the drive. Trust no one from the original investigation." Rachel immediately connected the flash drive to her laptop. The screen requested a password. She tried Briggs. Nothing. Samuel. Nothing. Retirement dates. Badge numbers. Nothing worked. Then she remembered the anonymous letter sent to Ethan. One phrase echoed in her mind. "It should have stayed buried." "Buried." She typed. "Lily." The drive unlocked instantly. Hundreds of files appeared on the screen. Surveillance reports. Financial records. Phone logs. Photographs. Rachel clicked the folder marked "Camping Trip." The first image loaded. It wasn't from the crime scene. It had been taken the day before Lily disappeared. Ethan and Lily stood outside a roadside diner, smiling at the camera. In the reflection of the diner's front window, a black SUV was parked directly behind Ethan's truck. Rachel zoomed in. The license plate became readable. She entered the number into the National Vehicle Database. The registration appeared almost immediately. The SUV belonged to Detective Samuel Briggs. Rachel stared at the vehicle registration for nearly a full minute. Samuel Briggs had always claimed he first arrived at the campsite after local deputies requested assistance. According to his official report, he had been more than 60 miles away when Lily disappeared. But the photograph told a different story. His SUV had been following Ethan and Lily the day before they reached the campground. Someone had lied. The question was whether Briggs had lied, or someone had lied for him. Rachel copied every file from the flash drive onto an encrypted laptop. Before she could examine the remaining folders, her phone rang. Officer Ramirez. "Rachel, we've got a problem." "What happened?" "Two men posing as federal investigators just tried to question Ethan. They didn't have credentials. When I challenged them, they left." Rachel stood immediately. "Get Ethan somewhere secure. Don't let anyone near him unless I authorize it." "Already done. But that's not the worst part." "Go on." "One of our surveillance cameras caught their vehicle. I ran the plate. It belongs to a security company." "Which company?" Ramirez took a slow breath. "Black Raven Security." Rachel froze. The name sounded familiar. She searched the files copied from Briggs's flash drive. One folder immediately appeared. Black Raven. Inside were contracts dating back almost 15 years. The company provided executive protection, surveillance, and private investigations. Its largest client, Hawthorne Biotech. Rachel recognized the name instantly. Hawthorne Biotech was one of the fastest-growing pharmaceutical companies in the country. Its founder, Victor Hawthorne, had donated millions to political campaigns, police charities, and children's hospitals. His reputation was spotless. Until Rachel opened the payment records. Monthly transfers had been sent from Hawthorne Biotech to Black Raven Security for nearly a decade. Most were ordinary business expenses. One payment wasn't. Dated. The week Lily disappeared. The amount was $5 million. No description. No invoice. Only 2 words in the transaction notes. Project Sparrow. Rachel searched the drive again. This time for the word Sparrow. Only one result appeared. A scanned letter written by Samuel Briggs. Project Sparrow involves the relocation of a minor. The operation has exceeded its original scope. I can no longer justify the methods being used. Terminate my involvement immediately. Rachel's heart pounded. Relocation of a minor. Not kidnapping. Not homicide. Relocation. Someone had chosen that word very carefully. She grabbed her keys and drove straight to the prison. Ethan was waiting in a secure interview room. He stood the moment she entered. "You found something?" Rachel nodded. "I think Lily wasn't taken at random." "Then why?" Rachel placed a photograph on the table. It wasn't of Lily. It showed Ethan's late wife, Sarah. The picture had been taken nearly 20 years earlier. She was wearing a white lab coat outside a research facility. Ethan looked confused. "Where did you get this?" "From Briggs's flash drive. Sarah was a microbiologist before she became a school teacher. Did you know she once worked for Hawthorne Biotech?" Ethan stared at the photograph. "No." "She never told you?" "Never." Rachel slowly opened another file. It contained Sarah Carter's employment records. Her resignation had been submitted 3 months before Lily was born. Attached to the resignation was a confidentiality agreement. Every page was ordinary except the last. Someone had handwritten a single warning across the bottom. "If they ever discover what Lily is, run." The interview room fell silent. Ethan read the handwritten sentence again. Then a third time. His hands began to shake. "Sarah never mentioned Hawthorne Biotech," he said quietly. "She told me she had worked in medical research before becoming a teacher. Nothing more." Rachel slid another document across the table. She didn't leave voluntarily. She resigned after reporting irregularities inside one of Hawthorne's research divisions. "What kind of irregularities?" "Unapproved genetic testing. Most of the records were destroyed. But Briggs managed to recover fragments." Ethan frowned. "You're saying Lily was connected to those experiments?" Rachel shook her head. "Not directly. Sarah discovered something much worse." She opened another file. Hawthorne had been secretly collecting DNA samples from children participating in free health programs funded by the company. Officially, it was for pediatric disease research. Unofficially, they were building a private genetic database. "That's illegal." "Very. Sarah threatened to expose it." "Then why wasn't she killed?" Rachel looked directly at him. "Because exposing her would have exposed the project. Instead, they watched her. For years." Ethan slowly sat back down. Pieces of his life began fitting together in ways that made him sick. The strange cars parked outside their home. The anonymous phone calls that ended without anyone speaking. The feeling that someone was always watching Lily at school. At the time, he had dismissed them as coincidences. Now they felt like surveillance. Project Sparrow wasn't about kidnapping random children, Rachel continued. It was about recovering evidence. And Lily was the evidence. Ethan stared at her. I don't understand. Rachel placed one final photograph on the table. It showed Sarah holding a toddler Lily during a company family picnic nearly 13 years earlier. Standing several feet behind them was Victor Hawthorne himself. Sarah took company research home before she resigned. Not documents. Digital files. She encrypted everything. According to Briggs, she hid the decryption key somewhere no one would ever think to look. Ethan looked confused. Where? Rachel pointed toward the photograph. Inside a necklace Lily wore every day. Ethan's eyes widened. A tiny silver locket. Sarah had insisted Lily never remove it. Even while sleeping. Even while camping. When Lily disappeared, they thought they had the key. But according to Briggs's notes, they were wrong. Why? Because Sarah switched the lockets a week before the camping trip. The one Lily was wearing contained nothing. The real key was hidden somewhere else. Ethan searched his memory. He remembered Sarah replacing Lily's necklace after fixing a broken clasp. At the time, it had seemed completely ordinary. Now, nothing about it felt ordinary anymore. Rachel's phone suddenly vibrated. She answered immediately. It was Officer Ramirez. He sounded out of breath. Rachel, someone broke into Briggs's house. They arrived after you left. The entire place has been burned to the ground. Rachel closed her eyes. She had copied the files. But whoever started the fire clearly believed something valuable had still been inside. Was Briggs there? She asked. No. But firefighters found another body. Whose? Ramirez hesitated. We don't know yet. Because someone removed the victim's fingerprints before setting the fire. Rachel reached Denver before dawn. The fire had destroyed almost everything inside Samuel Briggs's home. Investigators sifted through the debris while firefighters sprayed the last of the smoldering walls. The medical examiner met Rachel near the driveway. The victim wasn't Briggs, he said. Dental records identify him as Daniel Mercer, former executive vice president of Black Raven Security. Rachel frowned. Cause of death? He was dead before the fire started. Single gunshot wound. Then someone removed his fingerprints to delay identification. Rachel looked toward the burned garage. Mercer came here looking for something. Someone else got here first. Back in Red Creek Prison, Ethan couldn't sleep. He replayed every memory of Sarah over and over. Then one insignificant moment suddenly surfaced. 3 days before the camping trip, Sarah had mailed a small package to her younger sister, Emma, who lived in Boise. When Ethan asked what was inside, Sarah had smiled and said, "Just something I'd hate to lose." His heart began pounding. It had never been the necklace. Sarah had wanted people to believe it was the necklace. Rachel immediately contacted Boise police. Emma Carter was alive. Retired. Living alone. She agreed to meet within the hour. Emma opened the door holding a weathered wooden box. She looked frightened before Rachel even introduced herself. "I knew this day would come," she whispered. Inside the box was the unopened package Sarah had mailed 8 years earlier. Emma admitted she had never opened it because Sarah's letter instructed her not to unless Lily was ever declared dead. Rachel carefully broke the seal. Inside was a flash drive. And a handwritten note. The note read, "If you're reading this, they finally came for Lily. Trust Detective Samuel Briggs. He'll know what to do." Rachel's eyes widened. Everything they had assumed about Briggs had been wrong. He hadn't orchestrated the cover-up. He had spent years trying to undo it. The flash drive contained thousands of confidential research files proving Hawthorne Biotech had illegally collected genetic data from children and falsified safety reports to protect billion-dollar government contracts. Sarah had copied everything before resigning. When Hawthorne learned she still possessed the evidence, Project Sparrow was created to recover it. Lily wasn't kidnapped because of who she was. She was taken because they believed Sarah had hidden the evidence with her. Rachel immediately obtained federal warrants. By nightfall, agents raided Hawthorne Biotech headquarters. Servers were seized. Financial records were frozen. Executives were taken into custody. Victor Hawthorne attempted to flee aboard his private jet. Federal marshals arrested him before takeoff. During 48 hours of questioning, one executive finally broke. He revealed that Lily had never been harmed. After Sarah died in a car crash 2 years after Ethan's conviction, Hawthorne concluded the evidence was gone forever. Rather than risk another murder investigation, they secretly placed Lily with a family living under assumed identities and paid them to raise her far from Colorado. Rachel found Lily 3 days later. She was 14 years old. Healthy. Safe. She remembered fragments of her childhood. She remembered camping. She remembered her father's voice. But years of lies had convinced her he was dangerous. Rachel showed her the original case files. Then Sarah's final letter. Lily cried for nearly an hour. Finally, she whispered, "I want to see my dad." 2 weeks later, Ethan Carter walked out of Red Creek State Penitentiary after his conviction was officially vacated. Officer Miguel Ramirez waited outside the gates. Neither man spoke. They simply shook hands. A black sedan pulled into the parking lot. The rear door opened slowly. A teenage girl stepped out. For a moment, neither of them moved. 8 years of grief. 8 years of unanswered questions. 8 years stolen from both of them. Lily took the first step. Then another. Finally, she ran. Ethan fell to his knees as she wrapped her arms around him. Neither of them could stop crying. Some things couldn't be repaired. 8 lost years would never come back. But for the first time since that October afternoon in the mountains, they finally had the chance to build new memories together. Months later, Samuel Briggs quietly surrendered to authorities. He admitted helping hide evidence during the original investigation out of fear and pressure from powerful people. But he also provided the testimony that dismantled the entire conspiracy. His confession ensured dozens of officials, executives, and contractors were convicted. Rachel Monroe visited Ethan one last time after the trials ended. "Do you know what saved this case?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "The photograph?" Rachel shook her head. "No. One father, who refused to stop believing that something about his daughter's death never felt right,